Hi guys, here's Francisco again, and today I'm gonna try to help you to calculate the subnet ranges, and I'm gonna be using the same chat that I used in the last video. I'll not explain how to create the chat. If you want, I can put the link of the last video by the end of this video. And to calculate the ranges, you just make sure you are familiar with class A, class B, class C, and you are the full subnet mask. So, to get to start, I'll get some questions. So now we have here number of needed subnets. Let's have a look in our chat. If you are not familiar, 195. Here you see from 1 to 127, class A. That one is 195, so it's class C. What's the default subnet mask for an IP address class C? Look in the chat. Class C 255.255.255.0. Now we have to find our custom subnet mask. We need two subnets, so let's have a look in our chat. Here we have the network part, the host part. We need two network. We're just gonna use our line, and over here on my left I have 4 subnets. I cannot use 2 if I need 2, because 2 of this address have to be used for the network ID and for the broadcast. So custom subnet mask. Over here on the third line we have 128, and 128 plus 64 is 192. So our custom subnet mask will be 255.255.255.192. What's the total number of subnets? As we saw before, 4 subnets. Question. Total number of host address. In our chat we have here 4 subnets, and on the right 64 host address. So total number of host address 64. Number of usable address is just 64 minus 2, so 62. Number of bits borrowed. So to get 4 host address we took 1 place, 2 places, so 2 bits borrowed. And we answered the first part of this questionnaire. Now, what's the third subnet range? Now we're gonna see something called magic number, which shows also in this chart. I wrote here the network portion. I'm gonna put here the usable addresses and here the broadcast address. So we say that the range is gonna be from 0 to 64, and we're gonna add 64 in each network. I'm gonna highlight this in red, and we're gonna call this number magic number. So if you add this number, each network gonna be from 0 to 64, and then the next network gonna be from 64 to 128, and so on. For each network you add the number 64. So this is the first network. I'm going to start from the first address that we have, 195.223.5.0, and well, the next network going to start in 64, so it's going to be 195.223.50.64. The next network you keep adding 64, so it's going to be 195.223.50.128. The next one you add 24 again. Let's just copy and paste, save some time. Come on, not save any time like this. So this one gonna be .192. How we will find the usable address and the broadcast address for this network? If this one starts from 0 and finish in 64, the broadcast address gonna be 1 less than 64. So it's gonna be 195.223.63. The next broadcast address gonna be 1 less than 128, so it's gonna be .127. The .127. The next broadcast address gonna be 1 less than 92, so it's gonna be .191 until 2.5. Now, how do we calculate the usable address in which range? It's everything between 0 and 63. So the usable address is going to be in this particular network 195.223.5.1 till .50.62. So what's going to be the next range in this network? Come on. So it's gonna be from 64 until 127. So it will go from 65 until 126. What is the next? The next from 129 until 190. 190. So what's going to be the next? The next going to be from 193 until 254. And now we have all the network, the range in this network. So let's have a look in our questionnaire again. What's the third subnet range? First, second, third. The range goes from 128 until 191. So just copy and paste this answer. The third subnet range. So that's the range. What is the subnet number for the second subnet? Let's organize this. So for the second subnet, this is the subnet ID, the subnet number. So what's the subnet number for the second subnet? The ID of the subnet. What's the subnet broadcast address for the first subnet? So the broadcast address for the first one, here you go. What are the assignable address for the third subnet? For the third subnet, the assignable address right here in the middle. And here we go. Now let's compare our answer with the answer that we have from the teacher. We have here, whoops, not this question. For the first part, is address class C, subnet mask 255 to 5555, everything the same. Now let's check this critical part. What's the third subnet range? From 128 to 191. The second subnet 64. So everything matches. Let's try now a class B questionnaire. So now we have this address 19.35.0.0. We have to find 750 subnets. So if you take this line and keep borrowing bits until we get to borrow 8 bits we're gonna have 256. It's not enough. If you borrow one more bit, this value will double, so it's gonna be 512, and we are borrowing now 9 bits. If we borrow one more bit, 512 is gonna be 1024. So 1024 is enough. We need 750. So we're gonna be borrowing 10 bits. Let's have a look in our question again, and just one more explanation. Our line was here. When you borrow 9 bits, the line comes back to here. When you borrow 10 bits, the line comes to here. So our custom subnet mask gonna end with 192. So that's gonna be our custom subnet mask borrowing 10 bits. So the custom subnet mask is gonna be 255.255.255 because we went over 10 bits. 255.192. The total number of subnets in this case is 2 to the 10th, so it's 1024. Total number of host address, we can have a look in our chart. So right here on the left, 64 hosts per subnet. So we can add the 64 here. Number of usable address, 64 minus 2, which is 62. Number of bits borrowed, 10 bits. Let's go for the second part of the question. What's the 15th subnet range? So right here we have also our magic number. In this case is again 64. So we have here the 64. So in each subnet we're gonna add 64 to get the next subnet. So I have here already our address that we are working with. So the next one gonna be 19.35.0.64, and we have to keep adding until we get 15 addresses. 128, 192. So now when you get to 192, if you add 64 again, we're gonna get 256. So 256 cannot be assigned to any network. So we take the third octet and we increase in 1, and then this one becomes 0 again. So now we have our next network, and that one, the next one gonna be .1.64. The next one gonna be .1.128, and that's we will calculate 15 times. I'm gonna put this calculation straight away, otherwise the video gonna be very big. So here we go. After adding 64 in each network, we got all these networks right here in the middle. The usable address from 1 until 62 are the usable address, and from 0 until 63 the broadcast address of the first network, and so on. Here the second network starts in 64 and goes until 127, and those in the middle are the usable address. Now let's try to answer the questionnaire. It is asking what's the 50th subnet range. So here we have the network, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Where is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. What's the 5th subnet range? Goes from 128 until 191. What's the 5th subnet range? and we don't need this middle. So this subnet range goes from 128 until 191. What's the subnet number for the 13th subnet? So it's the 15th, 14th, 13th. The subnet number is the same as the network, or the network ID is this one. What's the subnet number? What's the subnet broadcast address for the 10th subnet? So this is the 13th, 12, 11, 10. What's the broadcast address? Here we have the broadcast address. What are the assignable address for the 6th subnet? So first, second, third, 6th. The usable address. Here we have the usable address for this network. Now let's compare the answers. From 128 to 191, 190.35.3.0, so everything is fine. So now let's do our last example with a class A address. In this case, I already say it's a class A address. What's the full subnet mask for class A? 255.0.0.0, and it is asking for 6 hosts. So it is needed 6 hosts. To get the host, we put the line after the number that we need. If we need the network, we take the number before the line. If we need the host, we take the number after the line. So over here we have 8 hosts. And how many bits we will borrow to get 8 hosts? 1, 2, 3, 4. To occupy all the octets, we have to go 3 times actually. 3 times these 8 bits. So it's going to be 8, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21 bits we're going to borrow. So 21 bits, and it's going to end in 248. So for our questionnaire, what's the Christmas subnet mask? 255.255.255.248. Total numbers of subnets. Well, in this case, the total number of subnets gonna be 2 to the power of 21. It's gonna be a pretty big number. Is 2. So total number of host address. We can have a look in our shares. Total number of host address, 8. 8 host address. Number of usable hosts, 8 minus 2 is 6. Number of bits we borrowed is 21. Just looking right here, we know our magic number is 8. But we go back to our search, and here on top we have the number 8, which is gonna be our magic number to calculate the range. So the question is asking, what's the second subnet range? So here is our address, and to calculate the range, we're gonna increase this network by 8. So each network gonna increase in 8. So it's gonna be 126.0.0.8, 126.0.0.16, and so on. I'm gonna put the calculation straight away. So now, after calculate increase all the network by 8, we can start to answer the worksheet. It is asking, what's the second subnet range? The second subnet range goes from 8 until 15. What's the subnet number for the fifth subnet? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The subnet ID, the subnet number, is the first. What's the subnet broadcast address for the seventh subnet? 5th, 6th, 7th. The broadcast address. What are the assignable address for the 10th subnet? 8, 9, 10. The assignable address are right here on the middle. The assignable address goes from the network ID until one less than the broadcast address. Two different ways to find the magic number and how the router calculates the network ID, the network number, the network address. So let's say that you have this address and you doesn't know if this address is an usable address or is a network address. So you will convert this decimal value to a binary value, and then you have this value in binary, which is the same of this one. If you go ahead and convert, you're gonna see that this is the same value, and you have here the full subnet mask with the slash notation 26. So if you convert, if you put here the slash notation 8 plus 8 plus 8 plus 2, you have the binary notation of this subnet. So the first one, the last one in the subnet mask is your magic number. So you're gonna increase the network in 64. So the first, if let's say that the one was here in the third position, the magic number was going to be 32. If the number one was here in this position, the magic number was going to be 2. So if you already know your decimal notation for the subnet and you want to find out the magic number, just take 256 and subtract 192 from 256 and you get the magic number as well. And for the router, what the router does to realize what is the network ID of this address, the router does the AND logic. So it takes 1 and 1 is equal to 1, and if you have two ones, is equal to 1. If you have 0 and 1, is equal to 0. So 1 and 1, 1, 0 and 1, 0, and so on. So if you convert this value, you're gonna have 1935.128, which is the ID of the network for this address. And here I have another example. In this example, this address, if you know the decimal notation, 256 minus 248, you have the magic number here, is 8. And if you convert for binary, you have here the last number one is in the 5th position. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is the 8. The 8 is the magic number. And if you do the AND logic here, you're gonna get the network ID. So here is the network ID. Thanks guys for watching. I hope this video helped for the exams, and I'll see you around.